6:07. This September meeting of Harney County School District number 3 to session. You join me in a salute to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going into public comment. Just a reminder for public comment, you can't address your comments towards any individual staff members. Please keep your comments civil, of course, and be courteous of everyone's time. Try to keep them under 3 minutes. We can set a timer and give you a hands up to let you know if you're going over time. We'll start with the slips we have and then see if anyone else has a burning desire. Let's start with Emma Todd.
You don't have to stand.
You can stay right here. You can stand, you can sit, whatever you prefer.
Okay. My name is Emma Todd, and Governor Brett Brown of Oregon State has made an order Friday, August 27, 2021, to enforce our mandate use of masks as to help us stop the spread of COVID-19. I'm a 16-year-old sophomore president. I believe this mandate needs to end. More than just our freedom, this also includes our health, so there are multiple doctors and nurses of Burns, Oregon, also located in Harney County. The masks are hurting our health more than they are protecting us. Workers who are forced to wear them not only must be trained on how to wear them, but they must medically be covered by OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. This for the reason of wearing masks for long periods of time. It can cause oxygen suppressed illnesses, but if not worn properly by constantly being touched, they can lose 1 to 3% effectiveness. As well as the time you touch your mask 20 times in school, that's about 20 to 60% off of the effectiveness of the mask. Us as humans need the ability to be immune to viruses such as COVID-19, and things like masks are decreasing your immunity for such illnesses. This will make us weaker as time goes on. Also stated on www.stadia.com, children under the age of 18 have had very few deaths. 412 people in campus have died from COVID-19 in America. As well as only 0.08% of people die from COVID before. Asking one of our teachers, even he, a veteran, thinks that this is ridiculous that we have to wear masks. It should be our right to wear a mask. It should be our choice. If we are old enough to choose if we can get injected with a vaccine, we are old enough to choose to wear a mask or not. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Well done. All right. Chris Wise.
I guess I will try to keep it short. I actually gave you guys a letter. I submitted this to the editor, the paper account. So, I mean, these are similar points we talked about last time I was here. One had to do with sexual education in teacher departments. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look into that or not. I know there's no direct comments or questions. This is what Harrison County Education has found, that touching yourself has been taught to kindergartners in the state of Oregon. I don't really believe that anybody in this county believes that's breaking teaching our children. Second thing has to do with critical race theory, or critical race theory applied principles. Teaching one child that they're superior or inferior to another because of their skin color goes against the 1964 Civil Rights Act. I would like you guys to get together and say that you will not teach anything that goes against that. It's not right to teach our children to be racist. It does not. In all reality, I think about 5 years ago, no one really thought much about race until all of this started coming up again. Okay. You know, I mean, the other real issue has to do with the vaccines being pushed on our teachers. Our teachers have had a chance to get it. You guys have had a chance to get it. They don't want to get it, you're going to end up chasing away good teachers. Teachers that actually think for themselves. I'm sure a lot of you know that's true. I've actually had conversations with most of you guys outside. These are the kind of things we have to stand up, not just talk about it, right? There has been other school boards. If you look through here, Cook County, led by Sarah Johnson, also stood up against the mandate. Baker County has stood up against the mandate. Oregon Police Department, Federation of Police, excuse me, has stood up against the mandate, as well as the firefighters in Oregon. So there's avenues for you guys to fight back as well. I mean, the other part is just ridiculous. If my child has about 10 times higher chance of being hit by a car walking to school every day than she does dying of COVID. In the US, 412 kids have died with COVID so far in what, a year and a half. I get accused of Munchausen syndrome. Teaching my child Munchausen syndrome. If I put her in a helmet, if I put her in a little badge, a big badge, send her to school every day, with a big shiny vest, she would be my phone. I'd probably call the cops instead of my house. That would be insane.
That's 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who would like to comment before we move on? On to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that you want us to set aside? I would like to set aside the financial reports and bills just because I have a question on those. Is there anything else anyone wants to set aside? If there is a general consensus, we can consider the consent agenda passed. Are there any objections? Nope. Okay, consent agenda is passed. On the financials, what was the PACE large expenditure? I was curious about that.
Insurance, I assume. Hundred and some thousand.
150, yeah.
Yeah, that would be liability insurance and also included in that.
Maybe a premium.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's okay.
That's what I thought. Just
yeah.
all right, thank you. Reports and presentations. Ask some questions on reports. We submitted in the packet. We can go right to Mr. Medley from the high school.
Was really interesting. I'll certainly have her give some reports on athletics and where we're at on that. So here we are, week 4. You know, it's been great for us this year. Obviously, last year how we started the year out in the hybrid and the cohorting and the 6-foot distance, and there was a lot more restrictions on how we had to get prepared for last year compared to this year. So this year it was certainly easier to work out the bugs and being able to go back to a semester schedule where we wanted to be with our 7th period day. I think it's been extremely helpful, and we've been able to meet our classroom settings of you know, now it's the 3-foot distance and how we have to set up in our classrooms, and because we've grown a little bit. Our numbers are up a little bit. You know, we have a few students online, which I'll talk about in a second, but our numbers are up a little bit. But it's been great seeing students in the hallways, and all of our students in the hallways, especially back doing athletics and doing some other activities I'll talk about here in a second too. We do have quarantine issues like everybody does. We have a handful of students that are quarantined right now that are out, whether that be because they have COVID or because there is a situation in their family. So it's been it's not difficult, but it's obviously you know, getting teachers to make sure that we're touching base with those students. I went into a couple classrooms today. Teachers are doing a great job. They actually were holding a lecture and they had zoomed in like 3 of their students that were at home. So I think our teachers are being very creative on making sure that they don't lose contact and connection with those kids, because we don't know what that number is going to do, right? I mean, it could go up, it could go down. because so much good is affected not only in the school, but what happens outside of the school with families and situations. So I think our teachers are extremely prepared for the situations like that, and are doing a great job of staying in contact with those kids, the students, and with their parents. So that's been good to see. We have approximately 25 students online. That number fluctuates a little bit here and there. We've had a couple students in the past week that have decided to come back into the building. And it was, you know, it's funny when you talk to some students. One of the students decided to come back in the last couple weeks. You know, we always ask them, well, why'd you go online? Because we want to make sure that we fit the bill on how you being in the building. And one of them just simply said, Mr. Melly, I thought it'd be easier. And I was like, and the parent was kind of, and I go, hey, I appreciate the honesty. That was great. But the online thing, and I've said it hundreds of times before, the online thing works for some students. And some students it doesn't. I don't know about how you guys were as kids, but if I was an online student as a kid, I wouldn't make it. I mean, it was my attention level at home, but some students are built for that, and some students excel at that. So we have some students that are on there, and again, that'll kind of vary. We try not to have it vary too much here after the next week or so, because once we're 4 weeks into the school year, into an 18-week schedule, it really starts to affect not only I don't want to look at it from a grade standpoint of what they achieve, but just the idea of what they learn and how they get that broken up into pieces. So we try to discourage that. Obviously don't discourage students that want to come back into the building, but students that want to go online, if it's for reasons of the COVID mask, then obviously go. We want to support all that. We want to make sure that we do it, early on in the semester to kind of make that transition easier. We just finished our ASVAB testing of all our juniors. And we also are in the middle of finishing our iReady testing for our freshmen and sophomores, which is a fantastic tool for our teachers to have that data. We especially like it for we have a freshman on track crew. So we take all of our freshmen. We did this last year, and I think maybe I talked about this in the board meeting in June. We took all our freshmen, 8th graders last year. We met with 8th grade teachers. We sat down and we categorized them. Now it's kind of a weird word to use, but based on, and we don't categorize them subjectively. I mean, it's okay, this students have, this many, this is what the grade issues are, this is what the referrals are, and this is what the attendance are. So we put them in that risk category so that our teachers or freshmen know, hey, it's not about keeping an eye on a kid per se going, okay, we gotta, no, it's about knowing, okay, what kind of supports can we put in place for these students? And the iReady piece is just another piece of that for us to factor in early in the year, because the studies have shown that the biggest tell to be able to see kids graduate on time is being on track as freshmen. So after your freshman year, what is the on track rate? And last year our on track rate was nearly 90%. So we were happy with 90%. Were we satisfied? No, 100% is perfect. But in the year that we had last year with the hybrid, online, back and forth, and the large freshman group we had, when we look at the numbers of students that kind of didn't make that. We felt at the end of that term, at the end of the year last year, that we were in a pretty good spot. So again, that happens. We got new programs. I know you guys just met in the digital art 3D printing room. I'd love to have you guys come down and walk through our school sometime when school's going on. That class, we have digital art in the morning, first period, and we have 3D printing last period, 7th period. And those kids do some amazing things on those computers. And that program, that room has all been set up through our high school success funds. And it's really allowed us to do it. And we had 3D printing 2 years ago. I said it was last year to a company, and I apologize. Last year it's kind of a fog. We had it 2 years ago. We had one printer, and Mr. Harrell, bless his heart, was down here every weekend for hours waiting for prints to happen. Now we have 4 3D printers, and they're new, they're efficient, so we're able to run that class a lot more efficiently. Our home ec room, we take it from an adulting standpoint. Mr. Ray is teaching that right now, and I can't say enough good things about what he's done down there. We really stocked it well. I mean, if after the meeting you want to go down and take a look at it, it's been fantastic. We've got the ovens, the stoves, the microwaves. We've got the whole thing is just top notch. He's also taken it to the step of doing some home auto stuff with the kids. It always surprises me every year, and I taught drivers every year. It always surprises me every year. All these kids that are 16 driving cars that don't know how to change a tire. Now, plenty of them do. Some of them have no clue. I don't even know where to find the spare tire. So little things like that, teaching kids to be more independent, especially where we live out here, halfway to being in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, most people will stop and help, but getting that stuff. So he's going to do some of that. He's going to do some of the basic home repair you know, maybe some things you can do with switching out light switches, just things that kids can do at home as they get older, they get into apartments, they get into college. So we think that class is really gonna grow. And I think currently we have about 28, 30 kids in the 2 periods that we have. And I think kids were excited to kind of get involved, but I think we're like, oh, let's wait and see what this is. But now I do know that, you know, when students are in the science class across the hallway, and the other day they were making French toast and bacon. I remember Mrs. Bailey was like, I don't know, we talked about, I couldn't teach there. So I think it's gonna grow. I think it's gonna be a great thing for our kids. Going off that same CTE topic with the 3D printing, our construction class is doing some fantastic things. You know, obviously with our construction, we want to get out and do things. Now, I know we built the sheds. You guys have probably seen those. Last year we built 4 outhouses for Roaring Springs, I believe it is. Right now, they're focusing on getting some projects done around our school. They built us a new ticket booth for the football field. This is totally set that up, and it's fantastic. They're gonna paint it. They painted the concession stand up there inside and out. They're finishing that up. They've done some closet builds in the softball buildings out there to be able to store stuff. So we'll just continue to give them projects to do. And again, obviously, it's great having a contracted individual, like Mr. Reckonsson out there to kind of lead that charge. But he's in the same boat too. We've really provided him with a lot of great equipment. And in fact, we got a brand new painter out there that I think they're a little bit afraid. You know, you painters, once you use them once, you get them clean, but are they ever really clean? So they've got some great things out there. Our band some people have asked about our band program. So at the beginning of the year, people have heard we hired a band teacher in August for a couple days, and then it didn't come to fruition. We had a teacher out, and one of the subs here, as we're going a week into it or so, the teacher's gonna be gone for 2 weeks, excuse me. And we started talking to the sub who was in there full time, and then I go, I majored in music. So we sit down and talked about it, but their situation was that they couldn't be a full-time, they couldn't be a full-time teacher at this point. At this time, they just moved here. So we sat down and talked to her, and right now our band, we have 20-some students in our band. That was the one choir. We want them both, obviously, but the band focus for her. So we were able to hang on to band. So we have a band class right now, and she is teaching that. She teaches 2 periods a day for us, which is perfect with her and her newborn. She teaches band, and she teaches a biology class because our sophomore class. Because that's also what she taught science in Albany from by 3 or 4 years, maybe. So she's been able to really help us out. And again, it's just a couple periods a day, but it's been huge. Our goal, and this is obviously with Mr. Burns, because it's a mid-school, high school position, is to continue to look for a band choir teacher. Band choir is a huge program within your district. We'll continue to leave that open at different points throughout the year. We'll search for that, and our goal is obviously as we start. I'd like to have one by the start of the second semester. If that doesn't happen, obviously by next year. So we're going to continue to pursue that. We have people call and say, "Hey, I heard you canceled that program." So we're not canceling that program. We're just trying to find solutions to it. But we are going to continue to have that. She's also talked about, maybe doing some pep stuff, football games, basketball games. So we're trying to kind of be in touch with her and how she works out. Our FAFSA night, we have a FAFSA night every year. Since I've been here, and it's what we do is bring all the parents and the seniors in, and Deb Arns helps us out with that. So does Scott Smith, and they talk about all the stuff that goes into financial aid. They talk about the OSAC, with the Oregon State scholarship stuff. We talk about the Oregon Promise, and they go over the whole thing. So they do that on a Wednesday. Excuse me. This year it's going to be on a Tuesday or a Thursday. We have a volleyball game on Wednesday. We try to stay away from game night, so we make sure we get as many parents there as they can. And then we follow it up on Saturday with opening our computer lab and bringing all the parents and all the seniors in that maybe need some assistance with the FAFSA. And Deb Arns has been great for us to kind of work through that. So we're hoping that she'll be able to do that again. And that's been something that parents have been very appreciative of. Because if you ever filled that out, last year was my first year. Well, I'm light, yeah. I filled a couple things out. My wife filled it out last year. Now I watched her and answered a couple questions, but she filled it out, I guess. But yeah, there's something to it. So having that night, I think, is very beneficial for us. Okay. So, I got more.
Mine's good. Athletics are going. High school's had a couple little snags here and there just because we had the smoke issue last week. So that's been kind of a, well, no, I take that back. It was an issue the first week of games. and then last week. So our first game for football was supposed to be in Sisters. They got all the way over there and they just had a crazy wind shift that blew in a ton of smoke. And so that game was unfortunately canceled. Last week, then we had the smoke here. So we ended up moving our team to Madras to play, which by the time they got there, it was like today here. So it was kind of like, well, dang it. But we were actually able to benefit another 2 teams by doing that because they were able to use our officials. So Sisters was able to get their first game in, and I believe Madras also their first game. So it worked out for everybody in a positive way. Volleyball's been going. They're in their first league game tonight, which is going great from the sound of it. So that's been really good. Cross country got smoked. They got canceled due to smoke as well last weekend. So they've only had 1 race so far, but they're headed to Nissa tomorrow. So that'll be a good race for them. And then they'll go to a big one, Bob Furman, in Idaho on the 24th. So that's kind of their big, almost you could call it like a state preview, but it's schools from all over the US, which is cool for them. Middle school took a little bit more time to get off the ground this year because Central Oregon teams were taking a long time to figure out what they were going to be able to do as far as sports wise. A lot of their schools said no sports, we're not going to deal with it for the middle school level. And so they were kind of going back and forth. So we were finally able to get some games with some Central Oregon schools that are able to play, and actually bus as well, because that's a big one for them as they don't have a lot of busing. So we were able to get a couple games with them and then picked up games for those guys with Prairie City, Baker, John Day. And so some local games. So we're pretty excited. Everybody has a full schedule, and so far, aside from our football game, we've been able to get everybody going. So we're excited. Kids are excited and seem to be having a lot of fun. So.
Any questions for us about anything on high school? Like that, I a huge shout out to our staff and our students. You know, obviously there's a lot going on, and we know about the quarantine, masks, and everything that's going on with COVID. I think our students have rose to the occasion. I think our staff has rose to the occasion. There are days, sure, that seem like they drag on depending on what's going on, but we have great students here. We have great staff members here. So it's a great place to be, and it's great to see her. It's great to see Emma, you know, getting up and speaking. I like seeing our students get up and speak about things they're passionate about. So I really appreciate that. Again, it's just we're lucky to be where we're at in Harney School District. I believe that. So yeah, high school, just like the middle school and the Slaters, I think it's overcoming some things and doing well. So, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. Obviously, being on board. That's good work.
You mentioned enrollment was up. You know about what?
The last time I saw number 248. And I want to say last year we were right around 225. So if we're in a situation too, I mean, we have our freshmen, so kind of an odd thing to say, but you know, we have 47 graduating seniors last year. And our freshman class coming in was 63, 64. So in between there, we picked up maybe 5 transfer students from different school districts.
Yeah, quite a few junior transfers this year.
Yeah, we've got some transfer students from different school districts. We at the high school level, we haven't lost a lot of students in other areas, other places. So you know, yeah, our numbers are up. And the other, you know, as we look forward, you know, our senior class is 55, 54. It's right around the mid 50s. We have a class coming in again next year, I think that's in the 60s. So, you know, here in the next year or two, we could still see another increase, which could put some strain on situations, obviously, depending on our teaching and what we have. But we'll work through it. But it is obviously, it's great to see our numbers up over there.
Thanks. Anyone have questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Witt.
All right, so I'll pick up right where he left off in terms of, hey, we've started the year. Really, that's kudos to our many staff members that have been willing to jump in there and work hard and make it through the mask mandate, vaccine mandate, and all that fun stuff that's coming at us. But numbers in our county the last few weeks, even statewide, have been really high. We've been super fortunate to be able to stay in school. We're trying to avoid CDL all possible. Like, if we can find a way to stay in person, we're going to stay in person. Like I said, they have athletics going full bore, and it's definitely affecting us here and there. We've got a few staff members that have either
gotten the virus or they've been quarantined because they've been exposed, but we've been able to have the subs to cover everything at this point, so we're surviving. I know Mr. Wright had asked about, update on the mask mandate. I would reiterate that again, nobody likes it. Still there, still a mandate, but everybody seems to be, I think everybody has that kind of attitude. This is what it takes to be in school full-time rather than being CDL. We'll take it. Most people, I mean, everybody handles it a little bit differently, but I was at an OSA meeting yesterday, and I know there's a couple volleyball teams out there that actually, even though it's not a mandate, they have their kids do it because when it comes to the quarantine rules, if they're masked, they don't have to quarantine as long, or they're gonna have to quarantine in some cases. So you'll see some teams that are doing it, some aren't. I would say most Eastern and Oregon schools, we're just out there playing, doing the best we can. We have a few students in our districts that have been quarantined. We're just again working through those situations on an individual basis, and we're getting through it. Really, that's what it comes down to. Probably the biggest thing, we had a special board meeting after the governor came out with their vaccine mandate. We're having to collect either proof of vaccination or a medical or religious exception. I would say I don't have anybody on staff that said they can't either get the vaccine or fill out one of those two forms. Except the forms that they turned in and all the reasonable requests, so they're approved. I think the challenge there is just like in a classroom collecting homework, right? It's like just collecting it from this many people gets a little bonkers. And I guess I want to make sure later it's on the agenda to talk about volunteers. I'm just curious about the board's feelings on volunteers, the vaccine mandate, how you feel about that, but we can talk about that later on the agenda. Rob just asked about enrollment. I was concerned when we built the budget last spring. We ended the spring at 743 district-wide. We built the budget at 790. On Tuesday, the 8th, we were at 791. So we picked up quite a few students that didn't come last year. I think most people were kind of tired of the CDL thing, excited that we would be full-time in person, and that's made a big difference. Another big difference is Liz Gears has been doing the online program. Last count I heard we were about 25 kids in the online program. So kids that really still wanted to stay in that CDL mode, they were able to pick it up with her, and she's done a phenomenal job. We switched platforms, so instead of using I think it was accelerated education or something like that last year at the elementary level. People were super excited about that one. So we went out and found a better one, the Nexus. It's the same one that quite the charter schools use. A pretty robust program for students and their parents have been really happy about that. So it's been a chance for us to maintain contact with other students, and then we get those away, get those back right off the bat. We did have several students that did choose to go to other charter schools online. Before I released them, I at least had conversations with them, or the principals had conversations with them to make sure they knew about our online program. Probably half of them said, yeah, we'll give it a shot, and others are like, thanks, but no thanks. So we just honored that and tried to move on with the hope that they'll come back to this. And Mr. Medley talked about band teacher. It was a big disappointment. We're still really hoping for a mid-year hire. A lot of times kids graduate college mid-semester or mid-year and have that endorsement rather than having to substitute the rest of the year. Hopefully we can pick up a band teacher. So that's definitely the hope, because we definitely do not want to cancel that program. A couple other things, but I'll save them for
All right, any questions, Mr. Quick? Okay. On to action items. Number 6, donations. Donations were $200 from Elmer, $100 from Jim Mary Lemus family, $1,000 from Steen's Mountain Camps, Harlan Wyardy. I would entertain a motion to accept the. Oh, Zotis Industries Support Program.
I
Make a motion, we accept the donations as presented.
Second.
Second motion.
Mr. Fulton has moved and Randy Fulton has seconded to accept the donations as presented. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. All right, motion passes unanimous. Now, Joe, second. Personnel, there is one resignation. If there are no questions or anything, I would accept the motion to accept that. Is there a second? Moved by Joe, seconded by Dan to accept the resignation. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. OSBA elections. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the information that was included? We're in the Southeastern District. Yeah. Does anyone have a burning desire to be nominated or make a nomination to that? No, no thanks. What about resolutions? Is there anything anyone wants to see OSBA work on legislatively?
Well, I can see they were working on everything that is a concern myself. I think.
Well, if that's the case, then I don't think we need to take any action if we're not going to nominate anyone for either of those positions. So we move on to item number 9, OSEA collective bargaining.
Mention that, McKenna here representing the OSBA Chapter 75 for Burns, and appreciate his union and their efforts to meet with us and come up with a collective bargaining agreement that reflects instead of across the board raises for different employees, a varying rate for each category was competitive within our area, and honoring our employees that have been here a while, but giving them significant raises to make the jobs attractive and on as well. Sometimes negotiations, they're not always fun, I'll say. Sometimes they get tense, but I think everybody on both sides had a good attitude. Everybody was respectful, and in the end, I think we came up with an agreement that both sides are very happy with. And so, unless you have any questions, my recommendation would be to accept the collective bargaining agreement.
I will make a motion that we accept the collective bargaining agreement, OSEA, as presented. Let's look at that.
Randy moved, Joe seconded that we adopt the OSEA collective bargaining agreement 2021 to 2023 as presented. Is that correct?
That Randy was on our team as well, Mr. Medley and Smarty and Mr. Burns and Mr. Graham. Thank you for taking the time to do that.
Yes, thank you all. Thanks for representing the board, Randy, and thanks for getting this hammered out, guys. All right, is there any discussion? Seeing none, proceed to vote. All in favor of the OSEA collective bargaining agreement 2021 to 23, signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. Discussions or new business, use of volunteers during the 2021 school year.
Put on there, we need to hear from the board as a whole, what their thoughts were on having volunteers in our district, especially the vaccine mandate. More generally, your thoughts about how many volunteers you want to see in the district. Is it a limitation? Use of the vaccine is something that I know I've accepted either religious or a medical exception for our employees. What are your thoughts about accepting that exception for volunteers?
Makes sense to me. That's good for our staff. Required one level to do something. volunteers shouldn't be required to do things, even though they're voluntary. That is their choice. So yeah, I would say they have to follow the mask mandate or complete one of the two forms that you could approve.
Consternation about multiple volunteers in the district at all, or?
I don't think it's wise to turn. I don't think it's wise in our situation to turn away volunteers.
We had last year, we definitely limited the volunteers, like, especially it's later, you know, Halloween parties, Valentine's Day, things like that. We limited just because it would get spread, but that's an event where it's just catching. Just trying to keep us in the school as well, so.
Probably could be left at discretion of the building principal, I think. They know their building and their people. That's my thought.
Mr. Lynn, do you have any thoughts?
I think it's, yeah, I need to turn away volunteers, so if there's an opportunity that they can abide by the mandate or by the rules that are set forth, and comply with those, so they should be there.
It's helpful, appreciate that.
I have strong feelings about the mandate at all, and I think it has kind of been the unofficial direction before that we apply the mandate as liberally as possible, giving grace to mental health issues and things like that when it comes to masks. And also with these vaccinations, one of my concerns is if we say that we're going to accept every single exception, then I don't feel that follows the exact intent of the mandate. It's no different than saying that we won't follow the mandate at all and that we will refuse to terminate employees come the 18th if they're not vaccinated. But we've already had discussions about that. I'm still working with other school districts in the county and around Eastern Oregon. We're going to try to get together next week to talk about some of these things. I agree that we should try to accept as many volunteers as we can and make it as easy for them as possible. Like I said, liberally applying that mandate if there are exceptions that they can fill out so they can still be involved with education. That's
May I make a comment?
sorry, public comment, so I apologize. Is there any other discussion? So the consensus is keep as many volunteers as possible, do what we can to keep volunteers, just like.
Make it as easy on them as possible. Make it easy for people.
Not a volunteer to the point where you're not gonna get our district or administrators in trouble. So we need to be not putting ourselves out there to lawsuits or anything like that, so.
That's something the superintendent principals can iron out before that volunteer, whatever they're involved with.
Yeah,
So
so
the background check.
things are blanketly approved, it's not doesn't mean anything, so there are. I would be skirting around the rule and I think that would be ethical. So,
As long as we have the leeway as management to determine, you know, how many volunteers we need for whatever, and, you know, or if there's a spike in within our own school community, we want to kind of keep things down. I mean, we need that ability as management to be able to make the best judgment to keep us open. That's our goal.
I think the policy should just be subject to our administrative team's discretion. Maybe not so much on who is. I don't know, somebody at the administrative side, but I don't really like that person. So I'm not here. Using your numbers and the events, yeah, that should be something that the administrative team should.
As a board of directors, I do feel like we can give a post for our administration to lean on if we give direction. And I do feel in my perspective of representing our community that I would like to see us commit to staying in person with as little restriction as possible to the fullest extent that we can, which means if there is a spike in our numbers and OHA says you guys might consider going to hybrid, if there is not an imminent threat to our students and staff, I feel like our directive needs to be stay in person to the greatest extent possible.
I agree, yeah. Just like we heard, you know, in the quote presented to us tonight. The risk to children 18 and under is very minimal. And so, yeah, I agree. Stay in person. That's gotta be the goal.
That's our goal.
Well, we would extend the law.
Basically, well, that's true. That's kind of the direction we want to go, honestly. So we work super closely with the Public Health Office. That's their goal, is as a person. Some public health officers aren't like them, but they're really about keeping us in school, and they recognize that it's not having the same effect on kids generally speaking as it does on adults. So that's definitely our goal. It's like, here, just as much as the kids don't want to go to CDL, the teachers also don't want to go to CDL. And neither do the parents.
If there is a change in our status as a county, to what level does the health authority have authority? Because last year when there was a spike, I spoke with the county health official and they said that they couldn't force us to go comprehensive, or yeah, CDL, comprehensive distance learning. They could suggest it though. Is that accurate?
I think they just encourage us to work together with them. So when we shut down last time, it was before the state said, hey, you should shut down. It was more of like, we couldn't stay open because we didn't have enough subs. And it was just crazy. But when we did have the spike last spring, even though the county numbers were saying you probably should be in CDL, our local public health said, no, you don't have enough cases in your school to say that. And we were like, there's no need at this point. So that's really the way it's been on the first 3 weeks of school. Even though there's high numbers in our community, we're able to stay open and function just fine in person, and the local public health supports that.
So that's sort of the general consensus is to stay open to the extent possible. All right, if there's no further, is there any further discussion on that? Let's move on to number 11, the board operating agreement. At the last meeting, we had talked about doing that number 3 example, and I know I had misinterpreted, and I think some other people had too. I like all the things that it said, but you're supposed to go through and just pick a handful of them, I think.
Yeah, the two at the beginning, the collaborative governance, there's 4 under there, and there's communication agreements. Those are kind of like general, like they're all, and then they just said, hey, we emphasize picking. So the board expectation is superintendent of those 16, could you pick 5 of them that you want to really emphasize this year?
Does everyone have access to that number 3 example?
Myself for mine, just pick 5, and there are no particular order of importance in mine. I put the superintendent's expectation of the board, an effort to foster unity, harmony, and open communication within the board, a willingness to acknowledge and follow the chain of command of the school district, careful consideration of each recommendation made by the superintendent, a willingness to abide by its own rules, policies, and code of ethical conduct, and a willingness to share the success and failures of the school system with the superintendent. Those are 5 that stood out to me as probably being important this year. Oh, I guess I said that initially, but my number 1 is pretty important for me within the district. It's a time when tensions are high and politics involved. And I think for me, it's a real goal for myself is to keep our district unified. We may have different political views or whatever, but our ultimate goal is to teach our kids, give them quality education this school year, and keep us open as possible.
Would you say the numbers of those names that didn't show up on the board or the superintendent's
So for mine,
expectation?
let's see, for effort to foster unity, would be
into.
Willingness to acknowledge and follow chain of command. Number 6. Consideration. 12. Willingness to abide by its own rules. List number 4. Willingness to share the success. So that's number 2. First one.
6, 12, 4, 2.
2, 4, 6, 10, 12, 10. What's that? 16. Yep, that's for the superintendent's expectations of the board. Does anyone have any discussion on that? I think all of them are reasonable.
4, 6, 10, 12.
Yes, sir. Which ones are screaming out at us for board expectations of the superintendent? Number 3. Work with the board to establish a clear vision for the school district. 7. Inform the board of all critical information, including relevant trends, anticipated adverse media coverage, or critical external or internal change. Any others that anyone?
I kind of like 16.
Follow-up information to board members on concerns and issues they have referred to the superintendent, close the communication. What else? 3716, was there any that you really like to look so? Well, I think if it's something that is taking place, but it's important to people, that's fine.
Number 5 as well, just the data driven. Make a decision based on data. The preliminary goals and also the self-assessment, I take those for granted, but those just happen. I think those are important, but I don't want to necessarily think we need to add those if they just are going to happen anyway.
Joe, Randy, anything else?
Well, you say. First, number 9, communicate with board members properly. I guess it's not now. It's behind my priority, but I can communicate with it, but I am.
Regarding the preliminary goals, was that one that we talked about, or
Well, it's like Dan said, I think it's taken for granted because it happens, but maybe it needs to be actually cited on the list.
Highlighted. 3, 4, 7, 16.
3, 4, 5, 7, 16. And if we can, people can suggest others. We can, it doesn't have to be the first 5 to come up with, but I think those are good ones. If everyone can agree to that. By consensus, can we agree that the 5 we'll do will be 3, 4, 5, 7, 16?
Yes.
And then we can have that put together at the next meetings. We can assign it.
Yes.
We're all in agreement with Steve. Mr.
I
Clerk.
mean, I had
Yeah.
no problem with the superintendent's list.
11. Next item, if there's no more discussion on that, is item number 12, the school handbooks, which were just for review. That was carried over from our last meeting.
There'll all be handbooks that are available online. So look at as well, so let's see if you do come across anything as concerns, let us know. We'll take it up and review it.
See how we leave. So I'm sure that that's-
Quick meeting. Yeah, they-
Any comments on those handbooks? Take care of that, so. Consensus, they looked all right?
Yeah.
They did. Lincoln building update.
So I'll give you a quick update. I know at the last meeting, we talked about putting the building up on the market. Since that, we talked to Denise Rose of Economic Development. Did that, and I figured out, which realtor to use and all that. She has some good suggestions, so she sent me an email this last week after we talked. And, she says, we met this morning with Keith Zibron from Cardinal, discussed the Lincoln building and how it might be best marketed for the district as well as the community. Cardinal has done some preliminary work and of course both phase 1 and phase 2 evaluations of the asbestos. They will have the asbestos abatement cost estimate by the middle of next week. This will be a good piece of information for a potential buyer to have. The timeline will be dependent upon getting approval to do this work under the EPA grant. Keith does not feel it would be unreasonable expense, but will not be able to provide a proposal to the school district board until that approval is granted. They are working on this now and anticipate hearing within the month. He is happy to attend the meeting. Unfortunately, couldn't make it tonight, so we'll set it up another time. But basically, to give a brief overview of the potential project and steps, just to get the conversation started with the board. As general ideas for the project, would provide guidance for EPA for developing an RFP process. Conduct a zoning assessment, address potential planning issues such as parking, infrastructure layout, solicit renderings of suggested uses for the property, including reuse plans for the school building, provide marketing assistance, including internal network connections to developers and bankers in the Northwest region, and work with real estate professional hired by the district to provide potential developers with site-specific evaluations and information. So I'd like to be able to continue with where it's worked with similar type buildings in the past and try to put together a proposal that makes the most sense for that property and makes the most sense for the school.
Everything that he's talked about there is very good points. Cardinal, that's their line of work. They've been in the community for about the last 6 months, working on some brownfield projects and stuff like that. So they would be a great team member to have in our efforts to eventually rid ourselves of that property.
Big cost to the district, so.
It's all been grant driven so far. Trying to move it forward as quickly as possible, but at the same time making sure we get all the details that are involved as well. So, in terms of us moving out of the Lincoln building, we're hopeful that it's going to happen this week. It's not quite ready for us, but
Do we need to rescind the motion to put it on the market and liquidate it as soon as possible? If we're gonna try to work with that group to.
As soon as possible.
If
If it's in there, we're okay.
Just trying to. Place the Lincoln Building and adjoining property on the market for sale with every licensed real estate agent who will determine the asking price. The board will have final say on accepted offer.
I think it would be best to rescind that motion, and make a new one. Join in the Harney County Economic Development process of getting the Lincoln property sold. Be kind of broad like that. Everybody up for agrees and let's get rid of it. We're not under any pressure to get rid of it. If we can get the assistance of the Harney County Economic Development, they're going to have some access to grants. That might help us clean up any abatement problems we don't have up there. I think every day. So I would make a motion to rescind the motion that was passed at our last meeting to place it on the market with every licensed real estate agent in Harney County.
Is there a second to rescind that motion? Randy has moved to rescind his motion. Joe has seconded. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion to rescind passes. Now entertain a motion to do what Mr. Fulton said.
I will move that the district join in with Harney County Economic Development and follow their guidelines and suggestions and working with whomever they feel that the district agrees to in getting the process of the Lincoln Building available for sale. That gives you a lot of.
Seconded.
Okay, so Mr. Fulton moved that we join with the Harney County Economic Development Department to get the process of getting the Lincoln Building available for sale. Is that right? Seconded by Joe. Is there any discussion? We pass that. One thing I was jotting a lot of notes down. Mr. Cook was giving a rundown of the economic development thing. One of the ideas that was suggested was that it could possibly be renovated and used as teachers' housing. I'm not saying, obviously, we're not making a decision to do that, but that thought of that excited me because that's an issue that we have with out-of-area teachers and young teachers. And if we could partner with a group that would make it not be a liability for us anymore and make it an asset we can use, that was exciting. So,
And that would be a great use for that building. But until we get the abatement, EPA, what everything's have to be done, and then I think the original motion leaves it up to John and Steve to say, hey, let's search for someone. Here's all it's going to take, and then get grants to get the asbestos and whatever other abatement needs to take care of. Heck, yeah. Dedicated primarily to the needs of the district would be great.
can we maybe see about getting Denise Rose maybe at the next meeting or sometime? Is there any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the main motion to join the Harney County Economic Development, getting the process of getting the Lincoln Building available for sale, signify by raising your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Next, board packets and agenda. I wanted to have a discussion about the way our, Steve. 14, thank you. The superintendent evaluation process. Just wanted to open a discussion up about that, because I think if we follow a similar calendar to what we did last year, we're kind of getting to where we're gonna contract with OSBA again, as we talked about. We need to get that process going. I think last year, we had one of our first check-ins in October with Mr. Quick, and I think in November, we were developing our targeted feedback survey. So I think we need to decide, at least if we're gonna definitely do it, we probably need a motion to contract with the OSBA to do that. And then decide if we want to have some, we talked about 3 superintendent goals at the work session. Talk about that some more, but what thoughts do you guys have about the process?
Yeah, we definitely want to hit our time frame, so it aligns with. That means the work session, that means schedule finalized with input of the OSBA. That sooner rather than later.
Are we have one for contract? We get charged for that?
Was it more than $425 last year?
I think it was more than that, but I don't think the rest is that.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I think because they didn't have travel expenses, it was probably a lot cheaper.
Okay.
And that'd probably be their preferred method, honestly.
Yeah,
to do it.
I think it's helpful.
Saves us money.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I just had no idea what was paid for.
It would come out of the board operating budget.
That's what I was thinking, it's probably just in there.
Okay, okay. So it's not huge lines.
It's wise to be financially prudent for sure, but I looked that up when I was trying to look at the calendar from last year, and before they knew they were gonna do the targeted feedback survey, I think it was $425. What they quoted us, and the survey, I'm sure, was more than that, much more than that. Joe, any feelings on that?
Wasn't involved in the first time, so I have no knowledge, I guess, that we were all in that situation last time, so. Yeah, just taking your, just looking at what you guys, how you felt about it. I just have to go off of that.
The superintendent evaluation process all has to be done in public session. So all of the goals that we set and deciding who to go through has to be done in public session. Last year, we contracted with OSBA, and they did a targeted feedback survey where they reached out to different groups and asked similar questions to if we were just evaluating them, but with community members and staff members. And so we got baseline data from that last year. This year, we can do it again. But we had a hard time making some of our calendar marks. We got late on some stuff, which pushed everything back. So I think we start that process now.
I think last year we got upside down, we had to change your presenters.
She retired in November. So.
So I think it was really this week and get them on board right early.
Entertain an official motion that we appoint OSBA as our official consultant for superintendent evaluation for 2020. Is there a second? It's been moved by Dan, seconded by Randy, that we appoint OSBA as our official consultant for superintendent evaluation 21-22. Is there any discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Item number 15, board packets and agenda. I thought it would be good for us to talk about the content of our agenda and the way it's set up to see if there's a way we can streamline it and make it work better for us. In talking with OSBA, they said that it's really uncommon to have financials included in a consent agenda. And I was a little unclear on, while I was researching what goes into a consent agenda, and it's things that you don't need to talk about a lot. One of the things that surprised me, all the policies that we get, Vincent Adams, the OSBA consultant we've had, said his school board in Albany puts those policies, if they're just modifications because of new statute, those policies are consent agenda items. Unless someone wants to pull it out to discuss it, but if it's just boilerplate stuff, because the consent agenda is for us to save time. So I felt like we should maybe look at pulling the financials out. Not having an old business section in here where we could bring up stuff from the past. That's just a common practice thing for setting up agendas that I've seen in the past, and I wanted to get everyone else's feel. If there are any other areas on the agenda that we can move into consent agenda to streamline things, if there are categories we should remove or add, donations, for example, like donations every month, that could go in consent agenda, unless we want to hold it out, so.
Figure out what policies, I think policies. Great policies. I understand putting policies that, you know, minor corrections and things like that, but a lot of times we, even though they're boilerplate, you want to have local control and local things about that. So that's why it's always kind of included in our first reading before you go is get some input on it. Like, but I totally understand what you're saying. If there are policies that are minor updates, yeah, those can easily go. So maybe it's a combination of moving some to consent and some, but I think you really need to talk about to actually.
Yeah, I would be hesitant. I think having it out of the consent kind of forces them to look at it. Okay, get complacent if they're always in the consent. I see value in having a first reading and a second on it, so for policies.
I'd be okay with, like you say, though, definitely if we can throw the donations and stuff in there, so we don't have to individually vote on that.
Yeah, I don't, for me, the donations, I don't necessarily think that they're to vote, to accept. I think it's more of recognition. To me, that would be still value to recognize the donations. I think that's important.
There's been a donation refused.
No, I don't think so.
I could agree on the donation part. We just put it in the minutes so that it's recognized. Rob, you mentioned something about the financial report.
Yeah, the financials, and really, I guess, I feel like it's a little cumbersome if there are things that we want to talk about, like if we need to add something to the meeting agenda or ask a question about financials or ask a question about minutes, we have to remove that stuff from the consent agenda before we move on. Really, I think, especially with the amount of business we usually conduct and how effectively we do, I'd be fine with no consent agenda. Approve the meeting agenda, approve the financials individually, approve the minutes individually, read the donations for the reason Dan said, because it gives a little advertising, a little recognition and thanks to people who donate. Yes, I did explain. I'm not, yeah, I'm not worried about making it short because the business we do is important. But I am worried about it being more effective. And I think if there are questions on financials or minutes, it's cumbersome to pull it out. And if we're only going to have 2 items on the consent agenda, I know for the hospital board, we had a consent agenda for years. And finally, last year, just decided because we were always pulling something out so that we could talk about it, talk about the minutes with financials. But it's,
I mean, I see value in having a consent agenda if it's just minutes. We're talking about old meetings, everybody's looked at it. But either way, it just takes a few minutes, so. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for streamlining and stuff, but maybe I really don't have any opinion on whether it should be left or pulled out. I think we just, either way, we're talking about a minute.
I'll have to go to this. Sort here. 12 pages long. Most of it is monthly bills. I can understand reading this a few days in advance and seeing like that large expenditure you talked about, 150 grand to jump out.
yeah.
But you would still, any board member will still be able to ask in an open meeting, what was that expenditure? So I agree with you. We need to take as much time as we need to make sure we get the business taken care of. We wouldn't want to go through any financial report line by line.
And if we like, we can just we can leave it like this, and when we're putting together the agenda, we can just be diligent about, oh, there's an item, we could probably go in there, or if something needs to be filled out, that's fine too. The other part of that that I wanted to talk about was with the board packets. A few of the other board members have brought up to me that they had trouble with the Google Drive. One of the things that I don't like is when we start accessing the files. For me, I like to compile them all in one place so I can take notes, which takes me over an hour to compile them all. But once they're compiled and there's a snapshot, if there are any changes, I don't see those changes, and I have found it hard to always have it current. My other concern is, in talking with OSBA, our board policy says that we'll receive the packet 3 business days in advance. OSBA said it's pretty common practice to have at least a week in advance. And in having to give notice for public notice requirements for public meeting law, I thought that we should have a discussion about, we prefer to receive the board packet in one file, PDF, that have everything as a snapshot, and anything that comes later could be an addendum. And do we want to consider modifying our policy so that we could receive materials earlier, so that we have more time to go over them? So,
Yeah, more convenient to read through would definitely be. I'm saying that, you know, each individual one. I'm not a huge computer guy, you know, so. My first time years ago was when we first went electronic, we compiled everything into one giant document. What ended up happening is you have a 200-page document sometimes. So then you're in the board meeting trying to find something super hard. So that's why we didn't think, so if you just want to see that document, just go to that document. So that's where we kind of got away from the one big doc, because there are some of those, especially if you had policies and a financial report and all that, it easily gets over 200 pages sometimes.
Joe, I'm like you, I'm not a huge computer guy. I've learned this system. And I could learn a new system if that's what the board decides, but I've never had any problem finding what we need. It's slower than most of you finding it.
And the more time part, I'm definitely not opposed to that with, and you know, this maybe this week's an exception, but with my schedule last week. I was fairly late last night, still reading and stuff because of the events of the last week and stuff. So more time, definitely plenty of.
So I always send them out by Friday, what I have. So you want it like 4 days before. And I'm still not, I mean, the packet is not ready.
I mean, I don't mind this format, I kind of like it, it's kind of an outline that put you into things. I know what you're talking about, though. I mean, I'm used to using Google Docs, so I kind of like it. I have noticed that every once in a while we do get a few changes and amendments, I guess. I don't want to put a bunch of work on anybody, but just if there is a change, just I don't know, some way to indicate, you know, hey, we put this together on Friday, but there's been a few changes to item 5, 6, 7, or whatever. That would be all for me. I like this format, but I can read it in whatever format you guys want.
Okay, well, it sounds like there's a consensus. The format is fine to stay this way. What about the length of time?
Well, I mean, if they're still modifying it, I don't know that getting it sooner helps a lot, but I guess it's just all depends on, like I said, I'll welcome as much time as I can have because I run a fairly busy schedule, as do you guys, Dan, and sometimes. So, you know, certain days, Sundays, I try to avoid the electronics and stuff, so that takes one of those 4 days out.
Unfortunately for me, I sit in front of one of these things all day long, so I get it. I guess.
Brenda, what do you think? Is it
They would work.
Would it be to bump it up a day or something like that? Is it unrealistic? Is it just a horrible thought that gives you up at night, or is it doable?
See, the reason I'm glad you all agree to keep the same format, because it is easier to just plot things in there. And then as I always send out a week before a reminder to the administrators to send me the reports. And then I make them an editor, because if they have any changes, then they can do that. And I usually do try to email everybody if there's a significant change that I know about. Make sure you look at this, whatever. Like last week, I did send out the packet of the agenda on Thursday because of the fair and all that. That was just because of all of our schedules. We were out of town and whatnot, but I just don't think it's complete. I can send what I have, like, as soon as I can, like on a Thursday or Friday. And then if there's any updates or changes, we usually try to email that. Let you know, and if there's like same day, usually we'll reprint the agenda and then just let you guys know. It really has to be in there, but it's not a big deal. Especially if you're keeping the same format. If we were doing paper and PDF, yeah, I'd have a big problem with that. That's a big deal. That's very time consuming.
Yeah, I mean, if you're still compiling, you're counting on a bunch of other people to put in their reports and stuff, if you're still compiling that, I mean, certainly if we could get it Thursday, that'd be great. If it's incomplete and you get some changes to that, I'm fine with that, but.
I'll just remind them earlier and try to have them. You just do the best we can.
I haven't found it a huge issue. I mean, every once in a while, I get to a time crunch, but I stay up later to do it.
So then is there a consensus you don't want to change the time either?
Brenda indicated that she's trying to get it out of date, or without any problems, since she keeps the same format, so.
Yeah, I don't know, I necessarily want to put an actual,
Yeah.
like day number on it, but in certain situations, like I said, this week, it was more, I had a hard time getting ready through it.
What's the penalty if she gets done a day late? Lashes or, I mean, yeah, if you could do your best, I mean, from my standpoint, if you could do your best to do it one day earlier, that would be awesome. And then from there, it's just, do the best you can to communicate. If it's a, grammar error or punctuation, I don't care. If it's a really significant change, then maybe a communication would be great.
I think that's totally fine. I'll just update and remind the administrators to have it to me by Thursday, so I can get it to you guys by that Thursday, by 5 o'clock. And that's 5 days before, so I think that's doable. And then if there's any huge additions, then we'll just email as we get them.
When does stuff have to be in the newspaper?
So I give them the calendar when we approved it last month, and so he does it automatically every
You mean for
Wednesday.
a news article or for a meeting of, meeting?
For a news article, does the agenda have to be? It seems like OSBA was suggesting it would be good practice to have the agenda public notice through your local newspaper.
Our newspaper, for instance, our newspaper's gonna come out in the morning. They uploaded everything.
Today.
So anything that's gonna come out in tomorrow's paper, would actually have to be in.
Thursday or Friday, and it would be probably easier. Because our meetings on Tuesday.
The calendar's on top, that's just as a community calendar. You're always gonna be a week behind. Just because it's there,
Since this is a file that's Google Docs great for you can just plug and play. I mean, is there a link that goes to this? So for instance, if the link was posted in the newspaper or whatever, then they can go look at it at their leisure.
it could be, the link could be included right in the community calendar notice, and they can say, oh, I can.
And then so it's that in that sense, it would be accessible to anybody that wants
It's also on the website, on our board page.
Yeah, and refer them to the website, I think would be sufficient as well, rather than taking up valuable page space.
Yes, we can do that. Brenda can give it to the editor.
I'll just include that because it's in there on the monthly meeting, and then I'll just say refer to the website for the agenda.
Yeah.
All right, anything else about packets, agendas, or anything else? General consensus is we're leaving everything the way it is.
One day sooner. Say devil. President shoot to get it out on Thursdays.
Is there anything different you want to see in the financial report? I just kind of took over what the task person was doing, and I haven't changed it, so.
Is there anything in your professional opinion that should be included?
At any time that you feel free to
Change it up.
bring it to our attention, yeah.
How hard, I don't remember C's, how hard is it to do a comparison, like year to date compared to last year? Is it any
For
harder
the
than just?
entire school district, or like this, or in this format? Because I have an Excel sheet for each month that I could show you difference by month, have a running total for the year, something like that. I can play around with it.
I would be interested in whatever. Curriculum review.
Talked about social studies, but I think it would be good for the board to kind of say, what charge do you want to give this committee? Yeah.
This was the sort of a site council-esque committee that we talked about, and stuff like that.
No, we had two different ones. One, you wanted a committee that looked at just that, the social studies curriculum. So I guess on that particular curriculum committee, not a site council, but a curriculum, committee, what exactly we charge that committee to do? What would you like them to report back to the board with?
Yeah. We gotta give them some direction on what we're at.
I think what our initial note said, something pretty open, was, you know, what is taught, pretty broad. So we kind of need some, what charge do we want to give?
I didn't think we talked about two committees. I thought we talked about one committee that was going to be comprised of staff members, administration have all parties represented, including community and maybe even student representation. And they were going to look at the curriculum overall and give them some charge on different things. We were going to look at that. Was it number one on the strategic plan? But I thought that was kind of a site council-esque committee that we had talked about.
That's actually our. Just the one.
I think we did have a little discussion on that, our work session. The hot topics that are coming in. Is that part of it, or something totally
So we talked about like each building has like a site council to it. We discussed the need of maybe something that's more district-wide as a site council, but then we also have the issue with the social studies for being adopted. I thought I heard you guys say you wanted a separate committee for that, just to.
Do we have active site councils at all the schools?
Working on leadership councils, right? You have leadership, right? But no, not like a particular site council. Parents.
Yeah, well, we have leadership teams, but I mean, in particular, site councils, you know, as per se, no. But that, I mean, usually you put site council meetings early, it'd be a separate. We're working on it.
guess there's a possibility that if the schools get the old school site councils back together, those site councils might be able to fulfill part of what we had talked about in looking at curriculum, reviewing things like some of the curriculum frameworks coming down. Social sciences was one of the ones that I know is contentious right now, but well, for a committee to look at those things and make sure that they're appropriate for our school and our community. But we had hoped that our first meeting of this council would be by, is it October or November?
October.
Yeah, have a meeting by October. And we talked about having a consultant help set it up. Mr. Quick suggested.
That's a separate, that's the strategic plan.
And so what was the idea of the strategic plan?
So strategic planning, we could take, relook at our current strategic plan, review it, update it. I did that's right on number 18 there, but I did talk to Jerry Colonna, he's super excited to work with us and put together a group of people, maybe not as in-depth as last time, but willing to sit down with a key group of people, with probably 12, 13 most. I think he said 15, but making sure we get at least 10 or 11, 12 there every time, but to review our current strategic plan.
What's the time frame for?
To get those through. His idea was to kind of renew it, make it another 5 years out, with your current goal that you guys like, but then maybe look beyond that. Where we want to go.
Still answer the question of what this board expects from this curriculum.
Yeah, I know we've done a lot of things, but I mean, to me, I would love to know what administration, principal of each school, obviously there's a lot of discussion in some of the board meetings about the social studies and that, I'm of the mindset that for the most part, people we hire are professionals and they're going to teach, and we don't want to interfere with that too much. However, there's some stuff that's pretty darn controversial. I know at the last board meeting, or maybe 2 board meetings ago, I had mentioned, I would love to be informed if there are any complaints in those regards, whether it's sex ed or CRT or anything else that's just seems out there. But I don't know what that would look like as far as a curriculum committee. How would that be implemented? What would that look like? Or are you guys confused on what we're even talking about?
I guess my question would be, what do you want? I really haven't heard exactly what you want out of the committee. Typically, you want to look through the whole curriculum and report back what is in it. I mean,
That's why I put it on. I went, what's the charge of this committee?
I understand, and
We don't need one.
we go through a whole process when we're up on a certain year for a certain cycle to get social sciences or math or English. Each year is a little bit different. So we put together a committee, and Megan does that with our teachers, and they sit down and they look at all the different curriculum before they order it. So there's research done on it. And I don't know if that's the time to have some sort of committee involved with it too, but so again, I unless somebody has a different answer, I'm not sure exactly. I understand why you're doing what you're doing. I don't understand the exact direction, I guess, and what you want out of it.
Part of the process too is we look at several different options. So like different publishers will send us different information or different books that they have available. So we'll have a team of teachers go through and look at those books and see what's available. And I forget the exact site. There's a site that rates the books and how well they meet the Oregon State standards. So there's an actual rating system they go through. And so the teachers just go through that and choose textbooks according to that and their past experiences with those publishers. And then a lot of the times if those books align with the state standards, they're given a different rating, usually given a higher rating, how closely they follow the state standards. So
I think it would be more of having the committee look through things and look through the curriculum and know what's in it, what's being taught, whatever it is. To not necessarily change the curriculum, but to have certain things be known of what's in it that maybe we take out of it. I mean, because that's an awful expensive thing. We come out and you guys go through the whole curriculum and the committee goes through the curriculum and says, well, this really isn't the book we wanted. We just spent. You know what I'm saying with that.
Yeah.
So I think the piece is, I don't think, the books that are out there, the idea is what is in the book that we're teaching. So how does that committee go about doing that? I think is the important thing.
As far as the public is concerned, if you go to ODE's website, anybody can go on to ODE's website and see what the standards are. So if they can go on to the ODE's website and they type in what are the state standards for mathematics, you can do that. Anybody can do that. So if there's these concerns that come up, I would welcome anybody from the board to the public to go in there and look at ODE's website and do some research.
I think that's where a lot of the concern comes from, is what is suggested as their standards, especially with some of the more recent additions, doesn't jive with what people feel is appropriate. And I think there are instances, Mr. Quick has said, that we don't necessarily teach those just the way it makes it look on the ODE website. That's not the way we address it, but people don't understand. And I think kind of information is a big part of the piece of having community members and parents involved in this committee. But I didn't walk away from that work session thinking we were going to have a curriculum committee. I saw it more as a standing advisory type committee. And one of the first things that this advisory committee could do was learn more about the curriculums that we have, take a look at it, see if they see any red flags or things that they don't find appropriate. Working with the teaching staff and the administrators. And we also had talked about the strategic plan and some other things. I thought we were talking about one committee, a standing committee, and I used the term site council X, because I know that even though that act has not been repealed, we don't currently have active site councils. So if we get site councils reinvigorated, this might be a different discussion. I foresaw it as just one committee, an advisory type committee to us.
That's what I had pictured in my mind too. I guess maybe we didn't make it clear, and that's why.
I don't think we addressed it until the very end of our meeting. We never had the pressure going into the other day. So that's why I want to have it good and clear here, what your expectations were for not only me, but our administration and teachers moving forward here. If it's okay to have the individual site councils get organized this year, include parents and community members, reviewing or at least looking at questions that come up regarding social studies could be addressed within that.
Would that be a more appropriate goal for the board, is to say this year, let's set the directive that each school will have established a site council?
Yeah.
To what extent, what would be a reasonable metric that we could say, be actively meeting by November? What's realistic?
I think we have to define what the site council is exactly, so that, and maybe it's there and I just don't know, but I think we need to make sure that everybody knows what it is, what the objectives are.
There's ORS that say here's what a site council is, who it should have on it. That kind of thing that should be looking at. So we can take a look at it and get it going.
I think there's some value in that. But yeah, I think that right at the end of that meeting, we talked about a bunch of stuff. The site council kind of encompassed probably that curriculum review is just kind of a side note. So
Yeah, I would think site council maybe is a broad definition, but even just like what we experienced tonight. So people can report back to us, because I was really impressed with the computer lab over there. So I think that's what our vision was before, is somebody who could come in and inform us on things like that were going on.
And I feel like it would be more nimble if there are school-specific councils that would be more appropriate, especially in elementary and things like that.
I like the fact that they're in the beginning stage of the site council. Let's give them a couple months to get a progression going. Maybe November, December meeting, they can report back to us on where they're at on their site council, and by then they'll have an idea of what their site council can do, and we'll have an idea of what we expect from the site council. I don't know if that's enough time, a couple months just to maybe get organized. I'm not expecting any results, but
I would expect that we could have the rosters of our site council by the next half. I mean, that's a month. You know, who's gonna be on it? I don't think that would be, you know, it's always an issue trying to get people to volunteer for
Sure.
things. And that's not a negative on anybody. I mean, we know right now during the times that are going on out there, it's difficult to get people to have the time to do it. But with that being said, I don't think I don't think it would be out of the question. I mean, do I want you to tell me that we have to have it by October? But I certainly think that with our efforts, because I mean, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I think we get it out there right away, a little bit more push on it. Because I think we can at least get the people that are going to be involved in it. I'm not saying we'd have a meeting by then, but at least we got to be involved.
that's a start.
I'd like a report back.
Report
by
back.
November. We could.
Just give it for the November board meeting, just to report back on the progress. But then we can research exactly what we expect too.
We'll have potlucks at our site council meetings. Who always helps.
Are there any, is there any more discussion on that? We kind of knocked out those three.
Yeah.
Just quick, does that make more sense?
Oh, it's super helpful for me to get clarification. And I did get a report from Jerry. He gave me 4 different dates between now and beginning of January that he can make it. He's saying strategic plan wise, he should be able to have an updated version ready by the end of January. It's the problem.
Board requests and reports.
I don't have anything I can give a quick report on our last fundraiser, but that doesn't have nothing to do with it. We had a very good fundraising event a few weeks ago. And we were very close to finishing off the debt we incurred as an ad hoc group.
Impressively.
I had a request before about enrollment, but Mr. Medley answered those questions, so.
I think we probably want to look at that every month anyway, so just keep that.
Yeah, so we keep an eye on this.
Couple things that I did have, I don't know, has everyone taken the opportunity, if you want to sign up for the stinking OSBA newsletters that come out 3 times a day?
I actually, when I update we try to make it
You have to be careful when you have these sign up for it. I requested some of those newsletter things to take off because they're pulling up fast.
But it came across my radar, there's a webinar tomorrow, basic roles and responsibilities of board members, which they do every year, but it's a really good one if you haven't seen it. And if you can't make, most of them are at noon, but they have an archive, you can go back and watch it. I just really encourage all of us to watch that one, but look and see if there's any other questions you have. There's some really good webinars on there that have the questions and they're archived. So that was more for the new members, one when he's here anyway. The one other thing was in the student services reports, I really liked how you talked about the different services we received from ESDs. And I think as a part of due diligence, we have talked about we need to at least evaluate our separation from the ESD financially and quality wise. And that really made me think that calling out these are what services we get from what places. If before the deadline, because I think it would be diligent, and the deadline is maybe November 1st to re-enroll in the ESD. If we could look at some more information like that and maybe tie some financials to it to make sure if there are services we could get locally, keep money in the community, but if we're getting better services elsewhere, I think it'd be good for us to see and the community. And I thought that was a good start on the student services. That I found it illuminating to break down these different ESDs, why we use them. So,
Well, it's still kind of a contentious subject. People still bring it up, so to be able to point out what benefits we're getting from where. Some more transparency.
we can do that. Does that sound reasonable? I guess that's in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, so a lot of those services are ones that we've continued, and those partnerships haven't changed, at least since I've been here. And so the relationship we had with Mrs. Chris and her staff out there with like Tracy's team and the Fred assessment team I think I talk to them once a week at this point, and we're just really trying to take them as more supporting county-wide students. So just FYI on those other services, like our special education services and things like that, but I'm happy to expand more on any of those positions. If we can keep it brief and not get too far in the world.
Mrs. Wilbur, is there a sensible way to tie some financial comparisons? I'm assuming you're the one to ask because you do the money stuff.
I can give you what we spent into the numbers are, and I think it would cover and tell you what that number specifically provides, because that would be connected to lots.
For special reports, I was just saying that I think by November 1st, the person has to say whether or not they're going to re-enroll in DSD, which that's not what I'm suggesting, but as due diligence. I'm sure you noticed Miss Hunter's report, how it broke down the ESDs and services they provide. If we could have a discussion and look at those a little more in depth and some financial comparison. So. Great. Is there anything else? Any board requests or anything?
I had an answer to the budget question for OSBA, and we did budget for professional services.
Looking at the ESD, then, is that something you want Shane and Chris to come in and talk to you about? Here's our ESD, here's what services we offer and we put up.
That could be part of it. I think a guest presenter would like it. So, and they would like the opportunity to as well.
I mean, what do we talk about?
I guess I would be curious to get from our local ESDs, you know, if you guys would consider going back to them, and what services could they provide?
Yeah, if we could have them come present, that'd be great.
Has it been 2 years? This is the second or the third year that we're starting? It's the third
This is
year.
the
Yeah, I'm gonna say that. I don't know.
Do we actually share people with them? I'm trained up here. They take us now through ESD. But wherever that is, because there's flyers there, so we got their statements. But we all kind of seem to share some.
That'd be informative. Is there anything else? Go to the order.